Internet friends, you may have noticed that I have not released a video in over 2 years. I got really busy, I had a baby, bought a house, got another dog, and had a complete rearrangement of thought and belief, aka a total spiritual awakening. So that was fun, and I hope to never have to do that again because it was really exhausting. You really don't know anything about your own strength until you're tasked with pushing a baby out of your own body. So there's that. Yeah, so I'm obviously changing the format a little bit for my videos. I used to take videos of myself talking, but technology has increased and gotten better, and now I can record my screen on my phone. So I can pull up articles and read them to you and give you my commentary. And I got this idea from a friend. She lives in Poland, and her screen name is SeriEyes or SeriEyes. And I'll link her so that you can go check out her channel because it's fantastic. And she gives wonderful commentary on articles and gives her opinion. And I like her opinion. And I like her format. And her channel deals a little bit more with psychology and human behavior. And mine may deal with that. And it may also deal with spiritual matters, energy, weather, things of those nature too, are what I generally study. So this should be a fun experiment to see if anyone likes it or cares. Either way, I'm having a good time. I may actually learn to laugh again. It's been very hard to have a sense of humor going through some of the trials that I've been through lately. But if Thor from thornews has taught me anything, it's that you've got to have a sense of humor and put it out there because life is really short and nobody wants to hear you piss and moan. And so the angry healer is going to attempt to be a little less angry and a little more friendly and try to have some fun. And that's why I was reading this article from the Inquirer. I got it off of Drudge. I like Drudge. It's a good site for news. It's a good site to pick up on trends in the deeper population, and it's fairly accurate. I've been following it over time, and the articles that Matt Drudge curates and puts up on his website, the Drudge Report, are insightful, and I found them to hold true over time. I find that they predict trends in the greater population, and I find the information that he pulls and the articles that he pulls to be relevant and interesting. And it's funny because my cousin and I were discussing that we're okay. My cousin and I are both, well, I don't even know if you could call it red pilled anymore. We both certainly are thinking in a way that's different than when we grew up. Um, and he's been at it longer than I have. And we've both seen the underbelly of society in a way that others will never see. Well, maybe they will uh, shortly if things end up falling apart. We could see more, but needless to say, most people have not yet seen the underbelly of society in the way my cousin and I have. And it changed both of us to see the real human potential and see what's really out there. It's not what you think is out there. It's not the view that you get from living in a small town where everybody knows each other and you might have a town drunk, or you might have a crack house down the street or a meth house, depending on what area of the country you're in. And you might see a little of those things. Oh, and there was a guy that got a bunch of DUIs. And there was a guy that one year that beat his wife. Or the sensational case of an ex-girlfriend luring her boyfriend over to her house and having two other men beat him senseless until he died. And that last case happened in a town near me, and some people I know who are pretty sheltered were very shocked. Oh, oh my goodness, did you hear what he did? Oh, honey. Oh, honey, if you only knew what's really out there. Let's hope you don't ever see what's out there, because it would make you rethink everything that you know about everything if you saw the way people really are. So that's why I'm no fun at parties and nobody likes me. But I like myself, so I don't really care. My point was that's why I like Drudge, is because he goes into some of these deep, dark holes of society that other people fear to tread into, and I like it. So I picked this article that he curated from the Inquirer. Don't laugh, movie comedies are disappearing. And I thought this article had a lot to say about our current society. I'm going to read some of it for you. There are those who worry about antibiotic resistance and flesh-eating bacteria, or the fact that it hit 90 degrees in Anchorage for the first time, and the melting permafrost is releasing ancient life forms. Those things are worth worrying about. I have my eye on something that, to me, is more troubling. I refer to the recent plummeting share of movie dollars that people spend on comedies because Hollywood isn't making them, or because America is in a bad mood, or both. The situation is dire. In December, I saw something that chilled me to my funny bone. When Kevin Hart's Night School opened at #1 at the box office, it was the first comedy to do so in more than 2 years. The Hollywood Reporter recently ran a numbers crunch revealing that comedies last year accounted for an appalling 8% of box office revenue. Now, some of this is a statistical sleight of hand. All superhero movies get dumped into the superhero genre pile, even though Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok are quite clearly comedies. Ditto the Deadpool movies, which exist to satirize superhero movies, and thank God, because it reflects the former American impulse to make fun of the grandiose in the self-important. Woe to any culture that loses the will to make those kind of jokes or the capacity to laugh at them. Haha, that's where I'm at, is trying to regain that funny bone after having seen so many things and finding out so many things. Seems like a lot of people are in the same boat. It goes on. Even accounting for mislabeled Marvel movies, though, the situation is disturbing. We're seeing fewer comedies and laughing less at the comedies we do see. To get a sense of this decline, let's run things back 20 years to 1998 for a full year comparison. You'll find a diverse array of comedies in the top 15. There's Something About Mary, The Nutty Professor, Rush Hour, You've Got Mail, The Truman Show. I don't know, The Truman Show was half comedy and half real, all totally real. Patch Adams, even The Waterboy. Way down ballot, you had The Big Lebowski and Rushmore. 10 years later, 2008, you had hits like Step Brothers, Pineapple Express, and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I liked all those except Pineapple Express I didn't like. But these were some great movies, and it's like their age has passed. And you don't realize it until you look back and all of a sudden you realize, wow, it's been 11 years since 2008. That's a long time. And then he goes on, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Wedding Crashers, Walk Hard, Knocked Up, Superbad, Hangover. Well, yeah, The Hangover came out in 2009. That was only 10 years ago. People still had a sense of humor 10 years ago. Oh, sounds like a lot's happened in 10 years. Things go in cycles, of course, and that kind of wave won't roll on forever. Talent burns out, partnerships disband. I didn't know Will Ferrell and Adam McKay ended their partnership. They had some of the most important movies for comedy that I've ever seen. And he goes on and he goes on. And then he talks about streaming services that have filled the comedy void for better or for worse. People go to Netflix for comedy. And they now think movie theaters as the place of event movies and blockbusters. So this is one reason he's giving for the decline of comedy movies. And another reason that blockbusters and superhero movies are so big is because the movie industry is also trying to sell their movies to China and other Asian countries largely. So the U.S. market has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking as far as the number of people who go to movies. And the market share on the rise is Asia and China. And they don't want to see... They want to see superheroes. They want to see those blockbusters. And so even though we're like, how many sequels do we need? Well, China needs all of them, because it doesn't even matter if they suck or not. Because there's so many people in China, they're going to get big money off of it no matter what. Just going to make sure I'm still recording. I am. I'm using a new app. And so I just want to check to make sure that it's still recording. And it is. Does it tell me how long I've been recording? 13 minutes. Who the heck is going to want to watch all this? Go on and on and on. Well, we'll see. You guys will tell me what you think. I don't know. I may keep comments on. I might turn them off. I don't know yet. Depends on how much hate is in them, because not most, but a lot of comments are filled with just people being stupid and vitriol, and I feel a lot more confident about leaving them on, though, when my face isn't on here to enrage people who want to just make fun of the way people look and everything. So we'll see. We'll find out if we leave comments on or turn them off. Anyway, so yeah, it doesn't even matter if a movie is good or not. There's so many people in China that you release a blockbuster superhero movie to China, and boom, you're making a ton of money on it. So they really don't care as much, in my opinion, about the writing and stuff like that. They're just trying to get it released to China. Kumail Nanjiani is actually really funny, who he's talking about here. People go to Netflix for comedy, and They now think of movie theaters as a place of event movies and blockbusters, says Kumail Nanjiani, whose beta male stand-up, if you haven't seen it, is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. He is hilarious. He has a way of taking things that probably destroy you. I mean, same with Richard Pryor. He has a way of taking things that destroy you emotionally and making them hilarious. So you definitely have to see his beta male stand-up, which I think was on Netflix, actually, last I saw it. Or did I see it on YouTube? I might have found it on YouTube. His opinion is backed by evidence. The market share grab now being undertaken by Amazon and Netflix has targeted the mid-budgeted offbeat tranche? Tranche? No clue. Of movies that have been a traditional home to comedy. Studios, meanwhile, have virtually abandoned the sophisticated marketing and careful platform releasing that helped comedies like Back to the Future, and now rely on blockbusters that make most of their money opening week. See, that's what they want, is blockbusters that make quick, fast, easy money. They're not looking to produce movies that stay the test of time. This hurts movie comedy in obvious and abstract ways. There is pretty good research to show that we think jokes are funnier when we see others laughing with us, like in a movie theater. It's conducive to a kind of social cohesion, a piece in Scientific American recently asserted, that binds us in powerful ways, often by building on forms that have existed for centuries and are widely used in movies. The Greeks noticed 2,000 years ago that we love to laugh at previous iterations of ourselves. I'm not going to read all that. Laugh at the misfortune of others. Yeah, we suck. But only if it's not extreme. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. We don't need to read any of that. You can read it. I'll post a link. Oh, 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 oh. We just made it to the good part. In addition, call out and outrage culture make it harder for comedies to pass muster with the vigilantes of social media. In the above-referenced year of 2008, two of the $100 million comedy hits were Tropic Thunder. Oh my God, that is one of the best movies ever made. You have to see that movie. An arrogant white actor thinks skin dye will help him be believable as a black man. And Don't Mess with the Zohan, about an Israeli IDF counter-intel agent with a Palestinian archenemy. I haven't seen that. I think I'm going to have to make a point to see that. It's virtually impossible to imagine those movies being released today. When Amy Schumer made I Feel Pretty about a self-doubting woman whose bonk on the head makes her magically self-confident, and I assume this was recent, she was hounded by detractors who believed the premise could not believably apply to a woman who was blonde and able-bodied. And if that's not, I don't know, it's not racist. It's like judging others and saying that because they're such a way that they can't have possibly experienced trauma or doubt themselves. So these call and outrage culture, social media, armchair protesters don't believe that a blonde and able-bodied woman could doubt herself. Okay. Why? Because you think that being blonde and able-bodied is the only thing that determines the course of your life? What if she'd been raped? That'll make you doubt yourself pretty quick. What if she'd been bullied? What if she suffered some other abuse as a child at home? What if she was just incredibly shy? What if she had a terrible accident or a terrible humiliation that made her unable to just made her doubt herself. Like, are we really so shallow that we think the only measure of a person is how she looks or how he or she looks? Because there's a lot more going on with a person than how they look, or if they're white or black or able-bodied or disabled or differently abled or whatever you want to call it. This is such, it's so indicative of the times that we live in that we don't see each other's pain. Like, if you met this woman in person and she was extremely, extraordinarily self-doubting, any person with basic sympathy or empathy could probably figure that out without her having to say it, and could start to get an idea of why that might be and be able to treat her in a way which made her feel less self-doubting, at least in your presence. Any person with a tiny bit of sympathy and empathy could do that. Or that used to be the case. Well, I guess what used to be the case is that people had sympathy and empathy because those, thanks to the social media mob, is largely gone, and people, even in person, don't seem to even possess a basic amount of sympathy or empathy. I'll probably talk more about all that at some point, but let's move on. Blah, blah, blah. Some stuff we don't really need to read. Okay, well, with a bunch of above examples, here you can feel comedy being dragged into the same politicized, polarized morass that has made so much of contemporary culture dull and dreary, and reduces what has traditionally been the comedy-loving American citizenry into a churlish electorate formed of grumpy constituencies, which is a beautiful paragraph and is exactly, I think, what the writer was getting at, was that we have lost our sense of humor from being politicized and polarized, and allowing the powers that own the media corporations to drag us one way or the other, with the goal being to make us fear each other, because when you fear things, you are vulnerable to being manipulated. What do they want to manipulate you into? They want you to buy stuff. Because when you're in fear, it's easy to plant ideas in our heads about, to try to make you want to get out of it real quick. Like, if you're in fear and they say, but you can go to your doctor and ask for this pill and that pill will save you, it's much more likely you're going to go to your doctor and ask for the pill. And they know that. That's why the commercials show things like they like, for instance, okay, my favorite drug commercial of all time. It also plays on people's like really, really, really deep fears, like especially the fear of death is a huge one. The fear of losing your independence or your mobility, the fear of looking different than other people, which has gotten way worse in the last 20 years than it was previously. I'm 40. I'll just tell you that right now. I am 40 years old and I look amazing for my age, and that's because, well, first of all, I pickled myself with alcohol, so I didn't age for 10 years. Well, I aged and then I was able to, undo it by quitting drinking, but I pickled myself. And so I look 10 years younger than I am. And, but I eat really well. Um, but that's why, my point was that that's why, since I'm 40, I remember what things were like in the 80s. I remember. I was there. I was alive and I was awake. And I was between 2 and 12 years old in the 80s. So I have a pretty good idea of how things felt, at the very least. And they felt way different than today. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, my favorite commercial that I've ever seen over the 40 years, and I don't watch commercials. And the reason why I even picked up on this one is because I got to the point with commercials where I mute them all. As soon as a commercial comes on, I mute it. If I'm even watching mainstream TV at all, which when I am, I'm usually watching cowboy shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza. Bonanza is a personal favorite. Oh, and Wanted Dead or Alive with Steve McQueen. Oh my God. That guy is one of us. He is, or was, he died when he was like 50. He was an amazing actor and an amazing person who had a rich, full life that started very young. Yeah, anyways, that's what kind of stuff that I'm usually watching. It's Westerns and Gomer Pyle and Green Acres and shit like that. Because I enjoy it. So anyways, you do end up seeing commercials. Well, I always mute them. It drives my husband nuts because he hates muting commercials because then you have to do something and he doesn't want to do it. And it doesn't bother him because he's mostly deaf, so he doesn't even care. Oh, and we keep the captions on. That's the other thing. Because he's mostly deaf, I started watching captions on TV, and I'd never watched captions before. I was able-bodied. I had no reason to watch captions. But I started watching captions too. So, okay, now the commercials are on mute and the captions are on. Oh my God, the things that you can learn about commercials once you put those two things on. But there's this commercial about 5 years ago for this drug called Opdivo or Opdivo. Opdivo, maybe. And I don't remember what exactly the drug did, if it was for something like congestive heart failure, maybe. But there was in the commercial, it was like basically trying to play on people's fear of death. And then what they do is they show this big shining white tower, and they basically say, like, this can be yours, this shining white tower of health can be yours, like you will live longer with Opdivo. I think they even said that too. And because you can read it, you're like, what? Because you don't always pay a lot of attention to commercials when they're just on, and people, then that's the whole point, is it's supposed to work its way into your subconscious. But when you're watching it more consciously because of this, like, it was basically like your chance to live longer with Opdivo, and then it shows this like towering, shining white tower castle thing, and it was like, whoa. Now, if that isn't exactly what every baby boomer is scared of, is death and wanting to live longer, I just don't even know. So that was the best one that was like the best commercial that I ever saw. Oh, and my point was, I forgot my point. It's so easy to use people's fear to get them to buy stuff. And the more you're afraid of another group of people, the easier you are to control. And I'm guilty of it. I am guilty of having been a raging liberal for 36 years. A raging liberal. Like somebody you didn't even want to be around because I was just obnoxious with all the typical liberal talking points. Just not even thinking. And not even thinking in a way that, like, my logic didn't sync up with reality. And here's an example. I knew nothing about taxes at all. I didn't know what a tax was. And then I started working and I was like, why is all my money getting taken? I don't get it. This isn't fair. And then I was like, oh, taxes. And I didn't know anything about it, so I had to learn it all from the ground up. But of course, nothing like this was taught at home, nothing practical. I didn't get an education in economics hardly at all. I knew nothing about money. And then, what was it? What year would it have been? 2004? George Bush Jr. sent me a tax refund check in the mail. And I was like, you mean I could vote and get a tax refund? Like, it just like blew my mind. Like, so if I voted a different way, they would give me more money. It wasn't even quite let me have more of my own money yet. It was, you mean if I vote a certain way, they'll give me money? I didn't know that. That's so cool. And of course I wasn't willing to vote, Republican or anything yet. And I don't know. I'm not really, I'm neither. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. I just see what's going on now. But that was just an example of how clueless I was. And so then here I am voting to raise my own taxes, having no idea where my money is going, why it's going, what's happening, nothing. I'm like, but if I don't give my money to poor people, then they'll die, and it'll be my fault that they died because I didn't give them my money. In the meantime, I'm the poor person, and I'm voting to take away my own money. It was that was where I was at. And of course, everything else I was just as liberal, and it was along the same lines. And so I spent 36 years being a liberal. And then when I jumped the fence, so to speak, there was nowhere else to go but all the way over to the other side. And I spent like a year being conservative, a year and a half maybe. And that was just as equally unfulfilling. And there were so many things I identify more with conservatism now, but I'm not going to be like racist. And I know not all conservatives are, but it happens a lot. I'm not going to be anti-environment. I'm always going to be pro-environment. I may not believe in a lot of things having to do with the weather, which we'll get into later, but I do believe that pollution is a very real thing, and the number one cause of death in the entire world is air pollution. So that's something that we have to look into, and so for me, saying that businesses should just do whatever they want and pollute wherever and however they want is not going to work for me, because that's the number one cause of death in the world is businesses polluting because of lax regulations. Now, admittedly, most of that going on is either in China or Drudge just posted an update. I don't know if you can hear that when it goes off or not. I have no idea. We'll find out because I'll watch the video later and we'll see what happens. Most of the pollution is either in China and Asia, the air pollution, or it comes from boats, big, huge boats that come from China and go to usually, a number of different places, but a lot of them is to the United States, carrying all the garbage that the consumers of the United States buys, all the little not just little trinkets anymore, just about anything you can think of is now made in China. I remember about 10 or 15 years ago, there was a push to buy everything made in the USA. And I was kind of laughing at it at the time, like, oh, these stupid conservatives. Because I was liberal. These stupid conservatives. And now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, well, actually, the amount of infrastructure that's required to ship products from China to the United States is enormous, is ridiculous. We're talking, you put it on a shipping container. Well, first you have to make it in China and put it on a train to get to the coast, put it in a shipping container, ship it with a bunch of other stuff. And that's where the pollution comes in these boats. One boat going across the ocean makes as much pollution as a million cars. A million cars. And what's in those, and then those shipping containers arrive at, what is it, Long Beach, California is the largest port in the United States, and possibly the world, I can't remember. And then they get taken off and put on a train, and then the trains drive, drive the products to wherever they're going, and or the city or a distribution warehouse near where they're going, and then they get off and they go into the warehouse, and then they go into a truck, and then the truck trucks them to the store where they're finally put on the shelf. And it's great. It's wonderful that we can do that, but it's a total waste in a lot of ways. Like, okay, it's great, but let's do it less. Yeah, right? Like, let's do it less. That's great. I'm super glad that it works and that everybody can get the things that they need. Let's do it less. Let's think about what we're putting in our houses. Let's think about what we're putting in our mouths, on our bodies. Let's think about it. And is there maybe a different way we can do stuff so that it's not so poisonous to the environment? Because that's not really a sustainable system long term. So anyways, yes, I am very much a advocate against pollution. And the other thing about conservatism that bothers me is it's like a mob, not a mob, but like not a cult, but a tribe. That's the word I'm looking for. A tribe mentality where you're either in or you're out. And if you're in, you're all the way in, and you got to stay in, and and you can't ever do anything different than the group. And if you're out, they won't even consider that you exist. And this has been a huge problem, especially for people who are gay or just different. So you don't do something that's a norm for your family, and they just push you out. And I've seen that a lot in conservatism, not just with gay people, but with like people like myself who tend to be verbose, emotional, brash, yeah, needy, and intelligent. And those types of people are generally ignored, shunned, pushed out, excluded, and marginalized. And that seems to be more endemic in conservatism than in a liberal mindset. So those are reasons that I'm not conservative either. But that takes me back to this article where I've learned to be neither. I've learned to be nothing. I've learned, not just learned, but it feels better. Why does it feel better to not take a side, to not be against? Well, I suppose there are still some groups of people, or some, not necessarily groups, but opinions that I really, really, really find extremely distasteful. And we'll get into that. And coming from liberalism and seeing how it worked for so long, it pisses me off. I'm going to be totally honest. It's hard to be like super excited about something that you saw fail so spectacularly. But then again, other people have come from conservatism and have seen that fail spectacularly, and so they might have a more of a sticking point for that. But regardless of that, I don't use that as a measuring stick any longer. I just know that it's there, and I know that both those things are there, and I don't I'm doing my best to make sure that I'm not participating in this ugly, polarized, politicized environment that he's talking about here that we find ourselves in now, because it sucked the fun out of everything. And it did. Being polarized in that way, it made me angry all the time. And the worst part of it was that it triggered PTSD. So I have, as probably not 80% of the United States or the world has PTSD in some way, shape, or form. Basically, let's call it what it is, experienced trauma. So I, like 80% of the known world, has experienced trauma in my life, and it's given me some long-lasting physical symptoms and emotional symptoms. But a lot of them stem from physical problems that creep up, and I can tell when I'm getting emotional flashbacks, and I experience elevated heart rate, and I experience blood pressure changes, and all this stuff. And if I keep being angry forever and ever, there won't be a very long forever and ever, because I'll have a stroke, is what'll happen. And that's proven that if you are angry, and because the trauma makes you angry, right? Because you're trying to protect yourself. So it's not like you mean exactly to be super angry. You're just, your nervous system is on edge, and you are resorting to old coping mechanisms, attempting to deal with the trauma. And it's very exhausting to constantly be on edge and constantly having to be on the lookout for, it's called hypervigilance. It's exhausting. It's totally exhausting. And so you're like, I can't handle anybody doing anything to me ever. And so you become bristly, not just bristly, then you become angry. Because people will step all over you, and you're like, my nervous system literally can't handle it. Get the fuck away from me, like, now. And that's how I've gotten, for the most part, which is a problem that I'm currently working on to try to solve. I'm actually using eye movement desensitization reprogramming on myself to deal with the emotional flashbacks as they pop up, and it's working. And I'm also using magnesium oil, which I've used forever, which everybody should use. Look it up. And I'm also just remembering to breathe and keep calm. And as part of that, I'm starting up this video series again, because it's giving me a way to, in the past, it gave me a way to talk about my world and put it out there, because sometimes you just want to be heard. Honestly, like, that's a huge part of the trauma, is, would somebody just fucking listen to me? Would somebody just listen to what I have been through and be a witness? Witness my suffering, witness my pain, so that I'm not going through it alone. And that brings us back to the sympathy and empathy, which Americans seem to lack these days. Trying to get back into my phone. There we go. Which Americans seem to lack these days is sympathy and empathy. And that's the whole thing. It's like we are seeing a huge increase in teen, especially young girl, self-harm and suicidality and anxiety. And the reason that is on the increase, well, first of all, it's social media is the big reason. But the second one inside of that is that nobody is listening. Nobody is stopping their lives because they're so busy and taking time for these teenagers who literally just need somebody to listen to them. They literally need somebody to stop and say, what is going on with you? Tell me about it. Oh my God, that's terrible. You saw a kid try to commit suicide in class today? That's fucking terrible. How the fuck does our society get to that point where kids are, and this is a true story, heard from a friend, that as she told me about what she saw, that kids are witnessing each other try to commit suicide in class. This is where we're at as a society. Why, in the holy name of God, did this ever happen? How in the world did that happen? How did that child get in that situation? How are all these other children able to be witness to this? How in the absolute hell did this happen? Okay, that's me being angry, so I'm going to try to take it down a notch because that's not really what I'm going for. I've got so many stories. I can't wait to tell you guys my stories. I've been waiting and waiting for the right outlet and venue and the way to do this that's going to reveal who I am and get it off my chest, but at the same time not reveal too much. Um, yeah, because not that there's some things that should be private, because I really don't believe in that. I believe in the truth, and I believe that we should all strive to be as truthful as we possibly can. But I guess what I'm looking to do is minimize the resistance. First of all, make it more entertaining for you and bite size, which is probably not going to happen anyways because I go through way too many topics at once to possibly be bite sized. But maybe you like that. Maybe your brain thinks a little bit more along the lines of mine and you can keep up with this. I'm hoping you can. I guess I need to get it out for myself, but I want to make sure that you guys I want to if you're open to it, I want to help you all learn because really that's what we're here on planet Earth to do is it's a testing ground for our souls so that we can learn stuff and learn about emotions because they don't have emotions in other places in the universe, and that's what makes humans unique. So, that's why we're here, is it's a testing ground. And so I guess what I'm saying is that I'm starting to learn that I'm not really doing anyone a service by being angry all the time and by being so brash that I push away people. And I've already pushed a lot of people in my life away. And in some of the ways, it's not a bad thing because it's separated the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. But there's a lot of people over the years where I look back and I'm like, wow, I really should have followed up with that relationship, or, I should have done that differently. Oh, geez. And I kind of made a mess of that one, and it's not like you can go back again. People are not forgiving. Well, they are and they're not. They used to be. I think that's more what it is they used to be forgiving. Like, you used to be able to do stuff and people would be like, they'd hem and haw and then they'd get over it, but now it just doesn't. And anyways, people are so freaking busy. Once you do something that's outside of their comfort zone, they're done forever because they've got a million other things on their plate that they would prefer to do rather than listen to your sorry ass bitch about every freaking little thing that bothers you. I'm speaking of myself, of course. And so I don't blame a lot of people, but at the same time, that's the freaking problem is that we don't take time for each other to talk and work out some of these issues. You know, you can go to a therapist, sure, but in reality, I've learned a lot from therapists, but there's things that I've talked about with my few confidants that I have who are all amazing, tolerant, kind, loving, spiritual, emotional people. And we have had discussions that were so healing, were so open, that they could totally change and revolutionize my life. I would not be who I am and where I am without those people. And those people, they have been with me through this. Those few people who are soul warriors, and they have been there and they have wanted to participate. And you know what? Very rarely do I get that's too much for me. And when it is, it's because the other person is dealing with something serious on their end that they need to a little bit more quiet to go through. And guess what I do? Okay, that's totally fine. I didn't mean to step on your boundaries. No, that's okay. We'll just talk about something else. Okay. And then I just go, if I still need to talk about it, I go talk about it with somebody else. But what you come across now, these days, is literally every single person that you try to talk to about anything, no matter how big or small. I can't hear it. Oh, I've literally had this happen. I'm not even joking. I've had people things like, tell me things like, I can't talk about that. It's too stressful. And if I get stressed, I'll just pull away. And it's like, it's literally stuff like, what's going on with this? I don't want to go into it too much because it's personal stuff, but it's stuff that needs to be talked about. It's not stuff that you can just sweep under the rug. And damn it, I should know. I've been addicted to just about everything you can be addicted to except for heroin. Thank God. I never got into that. But there's reasons for addictions, and they have to do with not feeling loved, not feeling heard, not feeling good about yourself, feeling like other people harm you and you don't stop it. Because that's what we do a lot. Other people harm us, and we're just like, oh, I'll hurt their feelings if I say anything about how they hurt my feelings. What? Or that person won't like me anymore, or I'll be shunned out of the group if I tell that person how they hurt my feelings. And then instead of telling the person and everybody dealing with it and dealing with the fallout from it, what do? We drink, we smoke, we cut. You know, this is the stuff that happens when we can't discuss what's on our mind. And that is why I am making these videos, I guess, is because I have learned that it's better for me to speak what's on my mind than to keep it bottled up. Because when I bottle it up, then I end up harming myself or harming someone else. And so I'm trying to release it in a constructive manner. Therefore, these podcasts, or whatever you want to call them, is my attempt at constructive dialogue with, I don't know, myself and with you guys too, if you're willing to listen. And if you don't like it, you can just shut it off. You know, don't try not to leave nasty comments. I mean, if that's what you do and that's who you are, I mean, I guess, but I may delete them if they're super nasty. I don't know. Just don't be nasty. Do we gotta do that? Do you gotta be reminded not to be nasty? I hope not. So, I'm gonna take a drink of water. I've talked for too long with no water. What is this at? This is at 51 minutes already. There's no way that anyone's gonna listen to all this. This is hilarious. I try to drink 60 to 90 ounces of water a day. And you should too. If you're suffering from anxiety, headaches, joint pain, confusion, depression, I can't think of any others. Water. Drink more water. Okay. So back to the article finally. This is going to be like a cross between Naughty Beaver, who you need to go check out, SeriEyes, my friend, and thornews, who you also need to go check out on YouTube. I'm going to read this paragraph again because it's so good. Here you can feel comedy being dragged into the same politicized, polarized morass that has made so much of contemporary culture dull and dreary, and reduces what has traditionally been the comedy-loving American citizenry into a churlish electorate formed of grumpy constituencies. I think it also underestimates the purpose and power of a mere joke. Full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness on the desert air, but that cannot be said of a joke. It exists to be told to elicit a response. It is intended as a basic tool of human connection and a means to pleasure. A well-crafted joke, a good comedy, a funny movie, they most certainly address and alleviate the human condition. See, that's what we're doing here, folks. I think what we're seeing is a period in which comedy needs to reinvent itself. I don't agree with that. I don't think that there's any point. I don't think that comedy changes over time, because they were just saying earlier in the article that the ancient Greeks found, light breaking of taboos to be funny, which is the same thing that we find funny today, or making fun of yourself at different points in your life, same thing as today. So I really don't think that the human nature about what we find funny has changed. I think that we're just in a period of history right now that's really sad and despondent. And so maybe that's why I'm doing this, is so that we can all have a good laugh, or we can be reminded to have a good laugh while this is all going on. And then he talks about Anchorman, which is, of course, one of the funniest movies that's ever been made. And I totally agree. And he says, when the permafrost melts and the ancient life forms commence their apocalyptic zombie assault, that's where I'll be, on his couch watching Anchorman, he means. And I don't know where I'll be when the zombie apocalypse starts. I hadn't really thought about it, actually. I don't know, so as I'll be on my couch watching TV. Oh, it reminds me of that movie, which I don't think was a comedy, but it was really, but it was sort of, it was Steve Carell was in it, and was that Keira Knightley that was in it? Oh God, she was awful. In Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, and it was so dark, and it was supposed to be kind of comedic, but at the same time it's not really, and I'm gonna give a big spoiler, so spoiler alert, at, because when he's talking about at the end of it all, where will you be? And this is, I think, a comet, an asteroid hits the Earth. Yeah, asteroid hits the Earth, and they all know what's going to happen, and so basically everybody loses their minds and starts doing whatever that they want to do that they never got to do, which is crazy, because we should all just be doing that now, except that unfortunately, most people's idea of doing things that make you happy, people don't really know a lot of times what makes them happy, partly I think because they never get to talk it out with anyone, because nobody talks about anything anymore. And so their idea of what makes me happy is, I'm going to drink until I die, or I'm going to gamble until I die, I'm going to have sex until I die, and stuff like that. And those, I guess maybe I shouldn't judge. Maybe that's, I mean, it depends, but I think a lot of it would just devolve into debauchery is what it would do. It's not like you're like, I'm gonna, and that's what they're saying in this movie, because at the end of he's seeking a friend for the end of the world, and they find each other, and they just lay in bed together, not having sex, just lay in bed together, looking at each other and telling each other how much they like each other. And that's, when the comet hits, or asteroid, and then the impulse wave hits them and everything like that, and they're, you know, and so maybe your idea of having sex at the end of the world is with your partner, or is with a chosen partner, like one person who you love, and you love no one else in the world sexually like you do this person. And in reality, that's not what most people, I think, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's most people. I don't know if a lot of people that's not what they would want. They would want to be humping it out with anybody they could find. And, I mean, a lot of this stuff would be just like basic reptile brain functioning. It's not higher functioning, and that's kind of where I feel like we find ourselves. I'm glad this guy, this Navy SEAL, fated to die at the hands of the Taliban, wishes he were back home on his couch watching Anchorman. I guess that gives me some hope that there are good people in the world, and they would like to just engage in the very simple pleasures of life that are good-natured and good-hearted, as opposed to doing some crazy shit at the end of the world. But I guess I don't know how much faith I have in that. So I think that's it for this. This video is really long. It's 58 minutes, so it's almost exactly an hour of your life now you've wasted listening to me talk. But maybe you like it. I don't know. I have a right to post it either way, unless YouTube yanks it down, which could happen, because who knows? They can do whatever they want. And people are like, go ahead, do whatever you want. Take everybody's videos down that talks about things that we think that are conspiracy, or things that we think aren't true, because we know, because we've been watching mainstream media, and we're really smart. So you never know when that stuff could just get yanked off of YouTube for whatever they deem fit. And yeah, there's other outlets or whatever I could go to, and I'm hoping not to run into that issue. Though I did have a video demonetized because I talked about something 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago when I was first doing this. I did have a video demonetized because of the topic that I was discussing. And so I know firsthand that they'll do that. But they also won't give me my $27 now because they changed their policy before I got to $100. Because their policy was when you got to $100, they'd send you a check for $100. And I got to $27, and then they turned off that capability. Now you have to have like either 1,000 or 10,000 subscribers before you even get a check. So that's different too. It's like, oh, we can't give away our money. We have to keep it, and we have to make more of it all the time. So I don't know why y'all are still here watching this, but if you are, put your favorite color in the comments section below. We'll see if anybody even watched it to the end. I don't know how to sign this off because I haven't figured that out yet. So thanks for watching, internet friends, and try not to die before tomorrow.